Now I'm good. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order, but just a reminder. So for those of you guys who listen to this, you can kind of hear us halfway this way, but on the recordings, you can't hear this end of the table. Is that right? And that's your experience too, Amy.
Yeah.
When you try to.
Okay. Gone back and listened, yeah.
Where's the microphone?
It's actually right here.
It's clear over there, so there's no way, not unless we had another microphone that went in the middle of the table or something.
Well, we have one of those downstairs, and that's hard sometimes to pick up people too. So we can ask IT about that though. We'll troubleshoot it, Lori, and see what we can get to happen.
Okay, cool. Okay, yeah. So minutes, guys. Something that popped out at me, Amy. Down here, 4B, under Junction House at the very end, asbestos removal, I most likely said Robert's house, not the baggage building.
Oh.
Since that's what we were talking about, if that makes sense.
So change asbestos removal to Robert's house, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
please. Anybody else?
Where are you?
First page, 4B, instead of baggage on the last line of 4B, it's Roberts.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I see the word.
That's a good catch. Thank you.
And I reviewed these and did not catch
I
that
didn't
either,
catch that
so I
either.
apologize.
Anybody else have any corrections, errors, comments? Okay, we need a motion to approve
I so approve. I move to accept the minutes
with the change.
as with the changes.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, guys. So we're keeping all these projects on the list just to remind everybody. So starting with the Junction House, Roberts House, in the minutes the last time, you guys were waiting for comments back from the review committee for the grant. Is that right? Has that happened?
It happened.
Yes, and they were emailed out to you guys by CJ
Okay.
back, I don't remember what day, but middle of January.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
The
because,
bottom
yeah,
line
let's
is
talk
we
about that.
applied for the wrong grant. In our rush to apply, we applied for the wrong one.
And as far as background for everyone, Steve, Linda, and I met with Kimberly and, gosh, I forget. Ann from History Colorado and the state on Friday at Saving Places. And they gave us the rundown, so I'll let you.
Yep, the rundown is that we applied for the wrong grant because we just weren't prepared for that particular competitive grant. So what we need to do is apply for a planning grant, which is a non-competitive grant. You can apply for it at any time. It is up to $15,000, and what that does is allows us to get all of our ducks in a row, because the big thing was we don't know what we're doing there. So the competitive grant requires us to know what we're doing. And it's what's the building going to be used for, what's the site going to be used for, estimate of costs for all of this, that, and the other, and we're just not there yet. So the planning grant allows us to start that process. And there's actually 4 non-competitive grants: the survey planning grant, historic assessment grant, and emergency grant. We could actually qualify possibly for the first 3 of those 4. But the planning one is the most appropriate. And the other thing, the big item, is that David and I cannot have any participation in this. So we have to get an outside architect to do it.
And that comes directly from the state. So they were checking on that because that was a big question that we had for them. And they emailed us on yesterday, and they have specific provisions in there that no member of staff or the HPC can be involved in that.
In the actual receiving of the funds. So we can
Right.
participate in the application process, but David and I, because we're on the committee, cannot be the receiver of the funds, so we cannot prepare the drawings.
So the only way if Linda prepared the drawings, if she was to come off of the preservation committee, which is not an option. So,
Neither for David.
yeah, exactly.
But Steve Pluth found in his archives of archives,
Yeah, I have
Yes.
another one of these too.
the city of Woodland Parks already made a plan.
Well, and that was,
in
can you talk a
2012.
little bit more about that, Steve? Because that came from CSU.
Could be the picture. I'm wondering if it's the picture that came from CSU.
Talk about it, in what
The
way,
document, or provide some background,
Yeah.
where it came from.
whatever you know about it, because I know nothing.
Yeah, all I know is that.
Oh,
Speak up,
CSU.
please, in one conversation,
But I don't know
please.
if that's where the picture came from. Nobody knows. But it happened in 2012.
Okay, hold on, guys. So what do you know, Steve?
All I know is I got that from a city website about a year and a half ago or so when I was gathering information for the Roberts Cabin. And I stumbled on it someplace in the city, I don't remember where. But there's not only that one, do you have the text one too, CJ?
I've got both of them here.
I just printed that one off, but I could,
I've got them both here, CJ.
Because there's a text one also besides that PowerPoint presentation
That's the one.
that Lori's
That's
got.
one Lori's got.
But it talks about what kind of parking they want and what they intend to do with the building and link it with a trail that's down to the property line. And, you know, if you read the document, that's about all I know.
I don't remember that at all.
No, I didn't cross our desk.
Well, if you look through it, you'll see that they're not restoring the structure.
No, it's about trails.
Yeah, it's about trails.
So I wonder if it was through the Parks and Rec,
yeah.
Could be.
and that had to do with trying to tie the trail going down that direction. 'Cause
Yeah.
that title front of it says something trail, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's where they were tying into it.
Exactly. So I wonder if this was done, it didn't come through this group at all.
I just thought perhaps it would save a step if they've already done what we're wanting to do. And by that, I mean, what is the future intentions or use of that building?
The one thing it doesn't do is restore the building.
Correct. It just
So, I
says
mean,
what they want to do
so
with it.
if the city still wants to follow this as a trailhead,
That's a big committee probably doesn't even know it's out there.
that's one thing. So we would still need to do the planning for the restoration of the structure. And FYI, you may tell maintenance that the barn has lost a panel on their roof and it's open. There's a hole in the roof right now
Of the barn.
of the barn, so it needs to be covered
Taking
up.
on water now.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
Is it corrugated?
it's
So
it's just a piece
blew
of,
up, it needs a piece
and
of
the piece that blew up is still there.
It's just neat, okay.
Yeah,
And I believe on the southeast end of that barn, I believe there's an opening as well, but I'm not sure. It seems like I noticed that the other day, but I didn't have time to go back and look.
I think it's always been kind of a quandary what the building would be used for, so as far as so
that
maybe
still needs to be figured out.
that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
But it's a planning grant that could be written,
Yes.
what's the scope of work of that that's required? Do you have to have that, know what you're using it for, or can that?
That's part of the process, is the planning grant allows you to plan. But they need to have preferably an architect that's done preservation before to be doing that planning. And then whoever that person is, like Chuck Severance, he's done preservation
Right.
stuff. It would be up to him to decide if he wants to get structural assessment or any of these other things. It would be Chuck's or whoever's responsibility to identify any other people that might be involved in that planning. Or it just could be Chuck. at this point, but he would have to work then with us and the city to determine what we want that building to look like. But for us to go to for any of these competitive grants, we have to have a floor plan of what's there and a floor plan of what's it's going to be. And we have to have elevations of what's there and elevations of what it's going to be, along with what we plan on using that building for. And I have to think about this, but we also have to start working with a contractor who can help with phasing. I've come to the conclusion that this is gonna have to be phased, multiple phases. So the first phase would be to take the additions off that are not historic, to get all of the asbestos out, and then to close up the building. That would be phase one. Secure the building. And then we decide phase two, maybe we can do this just in 2 phases, but it's all down to how much money is going to be through funding and how much is going to be provided by the city. I mean, that's all part of the process.
Almost sounds like we need to have a special, either subgroup or to just hammer through some of the details with the whole thing to try to figure it out.
But we were way short on that last. They were very nice when we did the Zoom meeting at telling us that, we did a good job. But they also were real clear when the first thing I said in our meeting was, we didn't apply for the right grant, did we? And they just both went.
But somebody recommended that particular grant.
That's what I
I
thought,
think they misunderstood where we already were in the process.
because I didn't just willy-nilly pick one.
I know. Okay, so I think we need to maybe figure out.
Well,
Options.
when you did, yeah, there was not willy-nilly pick one. And it was, I think you were clear, Steve, your objective was to get the asbestos remediated from that structure. So that's what you were applying for. That was what your conversation revolved around. And now that we've gone through that exercise and we got feedback and they've identified and flagged for us, we need to determine whether or not any of those additions have significance in their own right. What is the period of significance? Getting that defined. That was one of their big things. So now that they've looked at it once, they're going, no, we think this is bigger and you need to think this through differently. So they've shifted on us a little bit too. So let's not beat ourselves up. It's like, we wouldn't have the feedback we have now if we hadn't done that either. So I think that's important.
Yes.
It's just,
absolutely.
not ever the timeline we want. So.
But we are making baby steps. The other thing we learned at Saving Places is that there's also funding available through the EPA to do in the future testing for hazardous materials and removal of hazardous materials
Through the EPA.
through the EPA, which is also could be a potential for the Voss building as well. Because I asked specifically if sewage backup was considered a hazardous waste, and they said yes. But the other thing about the EPA and its potential for funding is it is very clear that the owner of the building carries tons of liabilities if they do not remove the hazardous material. So in this case, it's the asbestos for the Roberts house. In the Voss house, that man is legally liable for having a structure that is unsafe for the health and welfare of the community. So Steve and I today contacted that guy, and we're going to start trying to schmooze him a little bit. And if the schmooze doesn't work, then we're going to contact the EPA and see if there's a way to have the federal government come down. Because he has a liability, a serious liability for not removing the hazardous waste from that building. Him and only him. Nobody else's responsibility. It's his sole responsibility. So we'll see how that goes.
So you guys actually in contact with
Yeah,
him?
well, we called him and I then texted him. He did not respond, but we've given him the opportunity to respond.
Okay, so where do we go with the planning grant? What do you guys think? And what's the deadline? When's the next?
There is no
application?
deadline. You can apply
Those are
anytime.
the rolling
Those are the
ones.
rolling ones, so we can apply at any time.
Yes, so it's the decision on, it's the city's decision if they want to contact Chuck Severance or another architect. It's really out of our hands.
Chuck is really, I think, our only option up here.
It's the only one I know of, and it's
Right,
good that he is here.
Here, and the only one
worked here.
with some familiarity with what.
He's very familiar.
Well, he's worked with, on different projects.
Yes,
Before,
yep, and they know him at History Colorado.
as well.
I would say that there's no reason to postpone contacting him right away and getting the ball rolling.
Do we run into an issue of, because we need him to help us put like a swag together for how much we need to do some of the planning documents?
Yeah, he needs to tell us what it's gonna cost.
So do we run into an issue of, if he gives us that estimate, then he cannot actually do the work down the line when something's awarded?
I think you would request a proposal from him to do the work, and the work is based on his proposal. That's where the grant is based on what he thinks it's gonna cost for planning. Now, if it exceeds whatever your procurement limit is, then you'd have to ask other architects to do the same thing.
And do a bid process.
But no, I don't think so, Karen. I think we're the only ones that can't do it.
Well, I can understand that because they want clarity of roles. You can't be awarding yourselves work kind of thing. So you're either the architect or you're the committee members is
Yes.
what that's about. But I know I've run into situations before, you see this with actually just asbestos mitigation, that the guy who comes in and identifies asbestos is not the one that can do the remediation work. You need somebody else to do that in terms of like checks and balances.
They
So-
did not imply that at all. They said that they know Chuck. And we talked about the process, and it would be him coming up with what that figure is to prepare to go through this planning phase.
And remind me, Linda, we didn't need that for the application though, did we?
No.
That would
just-
be after the funds were awarded.
Yes, correct.
Right.
And then but there, I think it's worthwhile to talk to Chuck to see what it's gonna cost to do it, so we know,
Right. Because it's a $25,000
Planning grant?
max for the planning grant.
because I wrote down, because it's a 10% match.
10% match of the project total. So if the project total is 30,000, we get 25, but you're still paying that 10% on the project total, which would be that 30 or
I wrote
whatever.
down 15,000 was the max.
I thought that was 25. I can double check that.
On the planning grant.
On the planning grant.
Let's go for it.
So are we talking, we don't know, could be 15,000, could be.
I wrote down 15, but I don't know. I got
And
a
what do you
picture of
think it
that
was,
slide.
CJ?
25.
25.
Let's trust Linda on this one and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I got a picture of the slide.
Non-competitive.
Non-competitive can be applied for at any time. So basically, the bottom line is, and I think Chuck's pretty well versed in all of this because he's done a lot of grant applications himself on the other preservation work, so he may know more about it than we do. But
So it's a matter of visiting with him to
Yes.
start with.
I think so.
So are we looking for some consensus to at least explore with Chuck this planning phase
Yes,
and confirming how much money it actually is?
yes. And then we apply for the grant, then he gets the money and he starts to do the planning with us and the city.
I would suggest we invite him to the next meeting. We have a pre-planning meeting and define what the RFP amounts to and that he is answering to and help us through with it.
And I wouldn't be surprised if he knows more about it than we do, because I've heard
Oh, yeah.
in History Colorado is knows him very well.
That's a good thing.
Okay. So who wants to, is that gonna be too late, or do we need to move faster than that? Since it's non-competitive, it can go in at any time.
I'd meet with him at any point.
Yeah.
And then we can invite him to the next meeting to see what his thoughts are.
I would suggest probably get hold of Chuck, if that's our consensus. Let him know what's going on, and then, yes, invite him to the next meeting.
So we could have the vice chair make that contact.
Sure, I
on
can do
behalf of the meeting there. And,
I think so.
Next meeting.
Yes, and then follow up with, get here at the meeting and tell them where we at, and get the recommendations of how we proceed.
Okay, sounds like a thumbnail.
And then Linda, if you just want to if you meet with him and pass on my information to him, or vice versa, I can reach out and give him the details of the meeting or a Zoom link or whatever he needs.
We meet at our office, it's not far away, we just get as many of us interested in it,
I'll let everybody know.
there at the same time, and
The
our
biggest
office
thing
will
is
be
that
neutral.
it's, coming right off of our camp training, if we get more than 2 individuals from this group meeting at once, it has to be posted and all that good stuff. So if it's just like me and you meeting with him or,
Oh, casually?
right,
Okay,
But-
But two could meet.
2 could meet, but not 3.
okay.
So
Alright.
if you 2 meet with him, then yeah, just shoot, yeah, I'll go
Okay.
2 or.
It was just a matter of interest on it. I'm not the controller, or the one really knowledgeable in this case. So I would suggest the important part of you two, and it just happens to be, it's close enough, I can hear what's going on anyway. That's not a rule or-
You know, dude, we went over ex parte communication here, so it's,
I'll keep a motion and it's not communication.
can we edit that out of that?
I have a question if you have time to answer it. If not, just email it. But how does, not knowing the wheels of the city and how they all turn and everything, so you guys at this table say, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Larry just a minute ago said, let's do it. So what do you do if you want a $30,000 grant and there's a 10% match? What do you just tell city council or the?
No, because in the budget, it's already been approved, there's already funds allocated for grant matches. So we actually have a little more latitude than usual at this point in time. If we're wanting to do like different projects next year, I don't know, pick whatever, that there's something else we want to target. This would be the season of when you're like sorting out how much we potentially need, exactly what is the project, what is that scope? And then we would do that request as part of the budget process that says, hey, we need to allocate this much next year for this project. In this situation, like I said, it was money from the prior year because we never quite got it together for planning grants for the baggage building, for the next step around doing like a mini museum there. And then that's taken on another life of its own around Tava and reimagining Bergstrom Park. So that was kind of put on pause, but we still had the funds there. And, keeping the city manager in the loop, been very generous in terms of, okay, yes, we'll keep those funds in place. And yes, you can redirect those towards the Roberts House.
Remember, I think it was 12,000-ish?
So I just
Number that
looked
we
it up on the 2025 budget that we approved for the historic preservation. The Junction House asbestos abatement was 11,900 for the 25 budget.
Which is the dollar amount we've currently got to work with.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
So that's why it's already there. Otherwise, this board makes a recommendation around this is the project we want to do, this is the funds we're looking at. Budget process starts in like August-ish in terms of putting together that actual request for 2026.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so no, it appears we have a lot of latitude, but we did not get to this place by accident. It's actually a longer series of steps.
Okay.
And the city council has been very generous in terms of saying, you can keep that money sitting there and figure out where you're going with this, as opposed to, well, you didn't spend it. No, you're done. Try again.
Okay.
Well, maybe they'll give us some bonus points if we can get the EPA to do the abatement. That's the next thing Steve and I are gonna look into is how those, how those funds work and how you get them, because they're offering to do it for us.
Is that an actual like brownfield grant or?
It's a brownfield grant.
Okay, yeah.
And that gal's name was Kate Lucas, who did that,
Yeah,
presentation
yeah.
with the EPA.
When you visit with them, make sure you ferret out information around, does it matter what the building's going to be used for? Because my experience with those, just peripherally, has been, they target those more for something that's like commercial development or redevelopment kind of things. So I don't have the same experience with historic preservation, so make sure that that's part of your conversation to see if that impacts the answers you get.
Well, I'm actually not gonna have I'm not interested in having the conversation with them yet until Saving Places offers, every year they have everything streaming. We'll get a link, and I'm gonna rewatch that whole presentation and get a little bit more clarity.
Just make sure you heard what you heard.
Yes. Then I was thinking about making the contact with them directly.
Okay. So it sounds like we have some consensus then. Get with Chuck and see what he knows in this process. So we can, and let's invite him to the next meeting.
So Kimberly, you're hanging out there. Hopefully you've heard all that. Anything you want to add, suggest?
I heard all that. Thank you very much. As far as the Brownsfield, DOLA has a grant through them. Actually, I take that back. It's the Department of Public Health through the state of Colorado. It is not currently open, but it could be something as we determine whether we are eligible, that might be a good first step for that. As far as the non-competitive, yeah, we can move forward with some additional information that we can identify exactly what we want to use that for, who is going to do it, like we're all speaking about. But it's definitely more conversations to be had, but I think that might be a good next step. And I absolutely agree with the phases, because you can not get a grant for something that's already been expended, but you can do it in phases and therefore kind of bypass that with, if this is phase one, this is what we're doing, and then apply for additional funding for additional phases.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to make sure that we're kind
Track.
of all moving together here in the same direction.
Okay.
So what's the next step then is to get this fella to come to our next meeting? So a month from
No, I'm
now?
gonna meet
Is
with
there
him.
anything to do in the
I'm
meantime?
gonna try to meet with him ahead of time.
No,
I'm gonna meet with him as soon as he can meet with me.
and we should have some information after, excuse me, after Linda gets with Chuck. We can go from there. And so at the next meeting, we should have some really good information from Chuck and some suggestions on how to maybe put something together to apply for.
So
we can move.
on our next grant try or request, so the basic boilerplate stuff is all there, right, Karen? There's as far as the history of the building and description and all that, we don't have to mess with any of that again, do we?
I'm not clear in terms of whether or not we need to refine that a little bit, but I think you've got, 99% of the bones and stuff there. So I don't know, because remember they had some comments about finessing this or rewording the sentence.
Yeah.
So I think there's
on a
little
couple
tweaks.
things.
I do think regardless of whether it's this planning grant or just making sure we've got it sorted out, that work around, or the work that we need to do regarding period of significance and whether and when those additions were done and do they have any significance. I think that's something that you can work on in the background, Steve. We might not need it at this moment, but I think we're going to need it. So that would be my suggestion if you're wanting to work on something. I think that plays to your strengths.
And we also have to re-enter the building and take photographs of some contaminated areas. They want that for the
Right,
grant
yeah, they
request.
wanted to see pictures of the
Yeah,
affected areas.
which means it'll just be taking your camera and going like that to the wall. And they won't be able to tell what it is.
Well, I think there's ways to do that where you can take a shot from across the room of the entire wall and highlight it and then do
Yeah.
a close up. I mean, but
Yeah.
you gotta, that was one of their other major points is you gotta over explain it and connect the dots.
Mhm.
Because it's one thing when you're standing there and you know what's going on. So
Yeah.
even like with a floor plan, photo A is taken from here, photo B is taken this way. There's a high level of over explaining that needs to be put together.
And do I need, prior to entering the building, do I need to notify anybody or do I have permission right now to go in?
How did we do that last time?
I just went in. I told whoever, Cindy, was it?
No. You
I
did
don't
not go-
remember.
No, you did not just go in. You got hold of me, I sent some emails, we got permission for
Okay.
you. No.
Well, I don't remember. If it didn't happen within the
No.
last hour, I could hardly remember anything.
Well, don't go in until I have Chuck with me.
So, to what?
Yeah,
Don't go in until we can take Chuck
Oh,
in with
okay.
us.
Okay.
and we got you a key.
There's no key. It's all.
There was a padlock at one point.
No,
There's
it's
Now it's
just-
just, now it's just
It's
a
always
piece of
just
wood.
been the door with a piece of plywood
So
screwed
you-
in over the top of
Okay,
it.
so all you need is a power
A saw.
screwdriver or
Yeah.
a saw or a crowbar.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a hazmat suit.
And a hazmat
Yeah.
suit.
You said you had one, Linda, so I thought you volunteered for that.
If you don't mind walking through a building and you can't see it because it's real dark and dim in there, and all of a sudden you got a mat of cobwebs all over your face and your hair.
Yeah. And we've had some staffing changes here in terms of who's responsible for what. So I would like to actually contact Rob Feltz and see, since I think he's the one who oversees the city facilities, and find out what he's comfortable
Okay.
with. Let's
Yeah.
sort that out.
We want to do everything that makes them happy. so.
And then Kimberly's got her hand up. What did you want to say, Kimberly?
I just want to put it out there. Obviously, this is not a federal grant, but I'm sure you have all heard about some of the issues going on at the federal level with funding. That does trickle down. So where this will all end up, no one knows yet. But just to put it in your brains, I do know of some state grantors that are pausing their grants even though they are not federally funded because we don't know what the fallout may be with federal grant suspensions. So just be aware this may affect it a little bit. And it may be a little bit longer turnaround time than the 30 to 45 days for the non-competitive, as I've run into that a couple times so far with the state. So just to put it out there so everybody's aware.
And then the other aspect to that is Colorado Municipal League, who does lobbying for municipalities. They're all over that issue too, that I saw them send emails out last week. And when that news first broke about suspending all federal grants, that they are totally tracking all of that on behalf of the state of Colorado. So to Kimberly's point, it's just going to be a dynamic moving target for a while, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do our homework and keep chiseling away at the pieces we have control of.
Exactly.
At some point, the stars will align and our preparation and the opportunity will coincide, and that's when the successes happen. So that's where it's at.
Is the city, to your knowledge, Karen or CJ, is the city still wanting to restore that building down there? Are they on board with all this?
Nobody's told me, Karen, make them stop. So until that happens, just keep doing our homework.
So
Let's
they
just keep
know
working on the
they
background.
know that's one of our main goals. then,
So,
And like Karen said, I'll get with Rob Feltz, to see how you guys can access that or
what his comfort level is and,
Okay.
yeah.
And we
Thank
also
you,
made a
CJ.
call to DOLA today. And DOLA also has funding that's available to the city for restoration projects, as long as the city owns the property. So that's another funding source.
I have to say kudos to my nephew, who's an assistant director for DOLA. He gave me the personal phone number of the regional manager, and the regional manager called me anxious to help us out wherever he can.
What
And
was
he's
his
willing
name?
to set up,
Todd
Todd.
something.
I forget his last name, but he's willing to set up video conference calls with us whenever we want with him and another lady that is into historic preservation and in charge of grants for that. So anytime we want a conference call, we have an invitation to call them up.
And one of the things that they can do is move buildings. They can help with the cost of moving buildings, historic buildings, as long as it's owned by the city. I mean, we just came across all kinds of money that we never knew existed.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
On a side to add to that, there, I think it's very good and interesting to somebody dig through the Park and Rec. That seems to be the most likely connection of where that came from, and see if there's something of record or references
Yeah, I
on their
wonder if
old hard
Cindy-
drive or.
Well, ask Cindy what she remembers before she's out here.
Well, yeah, I definitely need to ask Cindy, but looking at this, since it comes out of the Department of Civil Engineering Technology, at CSU in Pueblo, my guess is it might have just been a student project, somebody looking for a project. And
Here it is.
yeah, that the city might have taken advantage of that in terms of, well, hey, you got some students that want to take a look at something? You know, go ahead, take a look at this for us. So that may be what this is, was really more that student project, as opposed to anything the city contracted for or requested, and potentially never like formally adopted, but it doesn't mean there isn't good information in here we don't leverage.
What about the text, Karen? The text of that other document, not the PowerPoint one. I don't know which one you got.
That's the one.
Oh, okay, so you think all that text and ideas and stuff is strictly the students or someone other than the city?
It appears,
You read this inside the first cover.
Well, here it is.
There's nothing on there that says City of Woodland Park. It's all out of them, out of CSU.
Final report, yeah, right on the cover page too, those three.
Yeah, this is a request for your evaluation of the final report, call for
You know,
you.
we had some interns and we did have some kids from CSU, but the ones that we had were not back quite that far. The ones we had, they were hooked with Main Street and they did a couple things.
That was a different project.
And that was a totally different project. And going back with this, because it has the word trail in there, that emanated from somewhere else.
the trail is in the planning coming from Green Mountain all the way up, right?
You know, when that, there was a lot of talk about Ring the Peak and all sorts of things about getting a trail in a variety of places.
Yeah, it could have been related to some other aspect, and it's just the piece that lands at that little corner of Woodland Park. Yeah,
The city of Woodland Park has extended their project idea amongst this team of students to help provide more of a perspective experience in this desired field of choice. The Junction House Trailhead Project has proven to meet many requirements of the civil engineering study. So somewhere, you know, there was a guy, he had a bunch of engineering students. You know, Sally might remember if she was connected with it, but I know we as a historical preservation were not connected with this.
Well, that's part of the process. We have to decide what this place is gonna be used for,
Right.
or we can't do anything.
Well, but this was done in 12, so maybe that's a good springboard to be thinking about some things.
I like his idea of a local rest area along the highway with picnic benches. I hadn't thought about that. I thought maybe, a
Well, trail,
transportation museum with all the things on wheels, move them all down there. But they have like a rest stop along the highway with picnic tables and all that, you know.
And tied in with the trailhead.
the whole thing with the
Sounds good.
trail is a lot cheaper, less maintenance type.
And see, it ties in with Steve and the bridge and the coast to coast highway, you know, that all ties together, but to put it all to join, but when I saw that rest area with tables and, you know, like a mini welcome center or sign, this welcome to Woodland Park, that type of thing, you know, that'd be, well, you know, I'd be comfortable with that. You don't have to worry about manning the building per se, you know, for volunteers to be there, but that wouldn't be necessary.
Where did you find this? This was on the,
I don't know.
It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning and you did some search and this popped up. Okay, all right. We kind of have a plan going forward then at the moment. Okay, we only get to check.
But a final word is, we need to have direction. We need to know what the city intends to do
Yeah, we can't do it.
with
What
the
does the
building.
city, what,
No, we
what is
need,
city council, our city council person is here to give us.
we need to come up with some ideas and make some suggestions into the system and into the individuals. Let's not ask them what they want, or we're gonna get 7 opinions.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
You gotta have a
Okay,
proposal,
let's come up
something
with-
specific and say,
let's
yeah, you
come up
can do
with
that, or
something.
no, I don't want anything to do.
Yeah. And why we think it might be a good thing.
Well,
And
let's,
if we're gonna partner with the UPass Historical Society, so that it's a joint effort, which would play into the grant writing with another group.
It wasn't that long ago when the city did their parks, trails, and open space master plan. So I'm kind of curious to check that document to see if it references this particular location at all.
mhm. And in the meantime, Lori, can we, as a group or a committee, find what we want to do with that building, so we don't have to wait to the next month's meeting, the next month's meeting? Can we do something in the meantime?
Oh, yeah, start with meeting with Chuck.
He might have some great ideas.
Let's see what this process is about.
Yeah.
And then, perhaps one of the, I really would consider it low-hanging fruit to tie it into, a trailhead, as opposed to anything else. But rather than having a building that has to house artifacts, now it's gotta be protected, now does it need the heat, does it need all this other stuff? If you have people coming, you need porta potties or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying, I think there's no reason why we can't come up with some really good, simple ideas for it, which would tie to the bridge.
Yeah,
That we could
that's been my-
take off the county.
That's
where
been
the
my
phasing comes in.
thing all along, is tying the two together. But I just want to keep moving
No,
instead of
there's no
waiting.
reason why we can't keep moving, but we should come up with the ideas. Let's not wait on anybody. That's what I think.
Because my thing is Hildred Davis,
I know, she's getting older.
and she was tickled beyond anything when we were at the meeting, a year ago and got it designated. But she's really hoping she could get all that furniture back in there and live long enough to see it restored. And she's the oldest resident in Woodland Park as far as residency. She's lived here longer than anybody else in this entire town, 85 years, born and raised here. And it would be so nice for all the contributions she's made to this city to get something moving, or at least show her something's going on before she dies off. That's all I got to say about the subject.
Okay, understood. Okay, we've got a plan. Move forward at least. Keep moving. Okay, Templeton Cemetery.
Good news on that one too.
Okay, we got word that they want to come down and the kids are coming down and they want to come down on the
21st,
it's
February,
21st of
21st
February.
and 22nd.
So 21 and 22nd, and hopefully it's not too freaking cold and we got 3 feet of snow.
Well, I'm gonna come down, their first day here is a Friday, is it? Is that the 21st? So on Tuesday of that week, I'm gonna drive over there and see what the snow level looks like. Recently, I was over there a few days ago, and it's pretty clear.
And I know you got permission to go on the,
Yes. I don't have to go through the golf course at all
Right.
with anything now. The landowner, the adjacent
did
landowner.
you get hold
is
of John and Amy?
Yes, he was ecstatic that we asked for his permission to go through his land. He wants to do it, he wants to come over and watch and everything.
Okay,
He's really on board.
So since the cemetery belongs to the golf course, we
Yes.
still need their permission to
And we've
actually
got
do
that.
Okay,
got it.
Yeah, we went through Silas and we had I talked to Silas personally, and he gave me permission to go through the golf course.
Did he give it to you in writing?
No, on the telephone.
CJ, can you do an email to Silas and copy Steve and say, hey, just so clearly all on the same page. I understand that you verbally told Mr. Flute that you're comfortable with this. And I'm just trying to cover ourselves
gotcha.
because
Yeah.
a student falls, hits their head on a rock, blah, blah, blah. They start looking for any opening in terms of like where there's money and liability and blame, and I just want it.
Okay, and
clear
as
that-
far as anybody knows, this isn't even for the city of Woodland Park, just if that lends any comfort to you. They're doing, Mines is doing it for me on a piece of private property. So Woodland's never, the word Woodland Park has never been mentioned to them at all.
Okay, so is that what you mean by the kids are coming? They're coming to,
The
what's
ground-
happening?
The
I
ground
just don't know.
penetrating radar.
Yeah, ground, from the Colorado School.
Okay, I thought it was like a reunion or something.
Kids are coming out.
See you in the cemetery.
The winter prison golf tournament.
What you see your college students.
Okay, so the kids are gonna come down, they're gonna bring their ground penetrating equipment to map it.
Mhm.
And, we need, can we look at our budget? Because do we know how many kids?
4.
4 kids plus the teacher? Just 4 kids. So per diem, as far as food, is,
I told the professor we would provide, and I'm more than willing to buy everything. I would put them up in a hotel room if they desire. I'll feed them, and I'll pay their gas.
What else are you offering, Steve?
Well, that's, I know you're
Student loan
just teasing, I know you're just teasing,
Can
but
we-
that's been the standard offer that I've made. This will be my 4th cemetery they've done for me. And that's always been the offer to them.
There's probably a little money in the budget, Lori, that you can flex, that we can at least buy them dinner one night kind of thing.
okay, how much money does it usually cost you approximately to do that?
I don't know.
Give me an idea.
Well, the last one up at Horn Cemetery they did last summer, they never did send me any receipts for anything. So they ate it all themselves. The time before that in Lake George, they would go up and eat uptown, and I would just go in at the end of the day and pay, and I have no
Okay.
idea.
Well,
For
you
2
guys,
people for lunch.
we do have that contingency line item and expenses, and under the notes for this year, it says headstone restoration, et cetera. We have $400 in there. So I would feel comfortable pulling from that to do this, because Steve, even though they're doing it for you, it is the City of Woodland Parks, and it's something we've taken on as the Historical Preservation Committee for the city. How do you guys feel about this?
I say, go half on it, not the whole thing. 200, food for a couple days, $20 each, plus tip on the
You
gas.
ain't gonna cut it.
Not gonna cut it. I mean, you wanna go 300, you wanna go, I mean.
I would like to,
the
Just
whole thing?
just FYI, the students at the Colorado School of Mines has funding opportunities for the students, so this is not coming out of the students' pockets. They were
Okay.
encouraged during our Zoom meeting to apply for money for lodging, gas,
Okay.
and food. So it could be that when you didn't get that bill that one time, that they were getting it through the School of Mines. So they know that we're here to help. They know that we've made offers to help them financially, and they've yet to ask us for help. But that doesn't mean that we can't help when they
okay,
get
so
here.
can I just say this? So as they interface, because you guys will be their main interface, if there's something that comes up that's necessary, get your hands on a receipt.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about it, and we have some wiggle room right there in just that one line item at this point in time. Is
Yes.
that fair enough?
As far as the cost and anything though, like if there's snow out there that needs to be removed, I'm renting a trailer and loading my tractor up and bringing it down, and I'll do all that. Like I say, I'll do the rooms. This cemetery, I wanted to get GPR for 5 or 6 years at least. Well, beyond that, I've been retired 11 years now, and I was still working when I wanted to get it. So I'm happy. As far as I'm concerned, they're doing it for me, and I'll pay for everything, just so it gets done.
I have a snowplow if that would help. I have 2 of them. And I live right at the end of the road, so I would like to help if I could. And would I be in the way with my survey rover to map these findings? So, have an
Oh,
accurate
no,
map?
there's room.
Yeah, and they'll probably mark something, right?
Yeah.
And I've got the base station. I would like to do that. I would
Okay.
like to map it. And I can make a copy of, whose name or whoever you think is there, whatever. So those kind of details. But it could be an accurate map, and I'd like to do that. And plus I want to see it
Yeah.
happen.
Well, then David, I was all concerned because this was all of this planning was happening when it was 30 degrees below zero. That these kids are gonna be out there in the freezing cold all day. And I talked to David about it. His daughter and son-in-law have a ice fishing warming hut that I'm going to try to snag.
I have one too, if you guys need it.
I do too, but it's ancient. Yeah, it's small.
So as it gets closer, we may need to put that up for these kids because they're gonna be out there all day for 2 days. And I plan on being mama bear. Checking on.
It's kind of southeastern slope.
Yeah, it's a
So,
nice
so there's a
hillside.
lot of
Yeah.
sun out there. so.
I'm just tickled beyond anything that it's finally gonna get done.
If there's gonna be more
Because
than
then
2
once it's plotted, each gravesite is plotted, then I'm gonna order unknown rocks like I do at the other cemetery and put one of those at each location. And I could visualize a fence around it, the pole fence that got the X braces and the horizontal poles. I could visualize something like that around it. And so
In the pioneer.
things are moving along nicely on Templeton.
Okay.
I think to keep it moving, we at some point need to talk about plat. And I don't know when that would be, but I mean, we want to do a final plat, and you talked to Greg Brown.
No, I
Now
did,
about the platting part of it.
I ended up not having to call him because we got access to the property from the property owner next door.
Okay,
See,
all right.
I was
all right.
gonna call him because we weren't getting responses back
I
from
understand,
Silas.
yeah.
But there's a flag lot up
Yes,
above me that Amy and John Dick own.
And that's the driveway that comes right
Yeah, cause right to,
perpendicular to it
Yeah.
before it goes downhill.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
So
our
it's
property line.
If you look on the map, it's just a narrow strip that goes
Yeah.
way down and then it opens up to where their house is.
Yeah.
Well, that is way cool.
Mhm.
But what I would like to see you do, if you could, is I'd like to get the city to designate it as a local landmark.
That's
But-
us. That's us designated it as a local landmark. And then we go to council and ask them to do
But
procedure.
can you ask the owner if he would be cool with that? I think he already did, and he said, yeah, if I remember right.
Yeah, the communication kind of ended when after I asked about access at the Togash slope along there.
Mhm.
And I haven't talked to him in a long time. I know it's for sale, but I'd be glad to ask him. And I think that would help give him the chance to clean up that fairway too that's encroaching severely.
Mhm. But,
What do you think, Karen and CJ? Final plat, we know, you saw the map with the,
Well, this is the thing, I mean, it's privately owned, the city doesn't own it. So
right, but I'm
if-
talking in planning.
But as far as like the property owner, once, authorizes the plat, to us, to me, it would just be another application. Hey, we want to do a preliminary and final plat on this.
Okay, that's a good answer. So I can bring that up and tell them.
And the
I can do
challenge with getting this set up as its own parcel is having access as part of that plat.
Yeah,
So the reason it's not an issue at the moment is it's considered part of the overall golf course parcel that, connects to a road. The
That's true.
cemetery piece is kind of isolated. So
It is.
it's got to have an access easement at a minimum, and then you'd be asking for a variance to the standard that it front on a road. So there's some technicalities under subdivision requirements that create some challenges. I mean, it's not a question to get it done, but it goes back to anything else we touch in Woodland Park, all the easy ones are done. Anything we touch is complicated in some way or another. So
That's what I was looking for.
this is what I see as the challenges. I think it's possible, but it's not gonna be fast and easy. It's gonna
No,
be
that's why
like
it's
everything
time to
else,
get
very
working
methodical.
on it.
I think we made more progress getting it locally designated as a landmark.
So that one
Getting the
part
owner to-
is, so say you created a parcel or you changed that Fred Gloff did, you know, the piece that's designated right now by deed,
Mhm.
we could change that, right, and plat it. You know, we always said we didn't need 5 acres, right?
Yeah, 1 acre, I'm sure.
No, I'm not even saying that. What I'm saying is, we could designate it. It's the owner, the golf course technically owns it. If they would sign the application as the owner.
I'm concerned about what is the legal description associated with the land, because it's similar to the property we dealt with last year, over here preschool in the Pines, that there was 3 lots, 2 of them were vacant. Remember, we amended that to peel off the vacant lots. So I believe in terms of what the assessor is looking at, you know, in terms of, I don't know what deed goes with what property, but they treat it as being part of this larger golf course property.
It is.
So they probably don't want the whole golf course property to have that designation. So how do you describe what part it is that you do want?
That's
So-
what I was getting at.
But isn't it already described?
It is, there's a meets and bounds
Right,
description and
for-
the deed is recorded and it's
As the cemetery.
as the cemetery
It's
site,
already
it has that
designated.
language, it just was never dedicated.
I would need to look at that relative to the plat.
Okay,
It's
so
all
yeah,
good.
let's
Yeah, we
just-
can do
let's
that.
table that and come back around and we can revisit that piece.
And as far as History Colorado is concerned, I asked him this, can you have a piece of property designated as a historical landmark if there's no access to it, if it's surrounded by private property? And they said, yeah, you can. So it doesn't need access
So we
in their
can, we can
eyes.
always pursue the designation without necessarily having the,
So it would be the platted
Access.
lot for the cemetery be designated for historic, it would be? Or would it be, I mean, can it just, does it have to have a, I'm a
if
surveyor,
there's,
so I
if
just,
there's a meet, it sounds to me like if there's a meets and bounds, Karen reviews it, she's happy with there's a meets and bounds, because I remember on the plat, there's a meets and bounds that describes the
there
cemetery.
is, yeah.
So it's actually in existence. So
It
we
is.
could actually identify it.
So that would be the whole 5 acres, and then what if you want to change it? Does that designation, I'm asking from like a platting standpoint. I mean, you got boundaries.
Well, that's a
of the
good
5
question,
acres.
because
Well,
if
that's
you,
what we
if
can
you
look at.
designate it first and designate the whole parcel, then you plat it and that parcel changes, what happens to that designation?
Yeah.
I just see ambiguity there as far, it's just something to think
And why
about.
is it any more ambiguity than the fact that it was already has a meets and bounds? And whoever did the construction work already backsloped and encroached inside of it anyway in the first place. It
I'm,
probably needs a new meets and bounds now,
I'm,
just to define what happened with the construction of
Exact-
the
well,
second
yeah.
hole, right?
and why not clean it up while we're at it?
On the
It's-
other hand, do we give a crap?
I would say so.
I'm just throwing the other end. If we can get it designated as with no access, it has its own meets and bounds, and we can designate it locally, and what Steve's talking about, do we care about how cleaned up it is?
Maybe, I need to know what's going on. I
Right,
can't
so-
answer that right now.
So we need the plat back in here with Karen.
Yeah.
Okay,
If I have all of it drawn and I have,
because I know we went over it in here a year or so
We did, it was a
ago.
while
It was
ago,
all
yeah.
there, yeah.
we'll revisit. And the assessors put the line back in for it, so I called her and Linda Breetag's got that parcel showing now. It's in a light gray, but it's one step forward to what Karen had asked for, is a parcel. It is.
And it is.
Mhm.
It's its own parcel.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, preservation plan. CJ, somebody was gonna get us a copy of the Minturn preservation plan so we could review it?
Yeah, and I
have
thought
an idea?
I emailed that out during the last meeting.
Did you guys see an intern preservation plan? Mailed out, emailed out? I haven't.
Maybe I didn't need some.
Oops.
And,
Because I mean, I
and I'm
didn't,
gonna hit on, yeah, something like that during my report too, but, so I'll get that to you.
okay, cool. Do you guys have any update on the Parks and Rec and Bergstrom Park reimagined contractor or a sub or whatever?
My understanding is they were actually trying to leverage some grant funds to help pay for that whole project. And I think they're still waiting to hear back on the status of that.
Okay,
So it's in play, it's just not got enough traction yet.
When you say a grant for that whole project, what do you mean?
I'm not sure, Steve. I'm Cinderella in the basement, for God's sake. Okay, I just hear rumors. And my understanding is they've applied for money to help pay for the consultant to look at reimagining Bergstrom Park.
to lead the effort.
So
That's what they're.
that's all I got.
The consulting company. So we're still looking for monies for consulting.
Trying to leverage funds, you know?
Okay, youth poster contest.
I got nothing, sorry.
Okay, next, Skip, other business. Any update on the church on Henrietta?
Haven't heard a thing.
Okay,
but
that's
they're all
easy. Okay, Voss Building, we sort of touched on that puppy. You guys are gonna pursue this young man.
Yeah, I wanted to, Linda started to say a few things about it, about the liability. That guy his butt is hanging out there big time. And if the city wanted to, they could probably go threatening with that alone and make him move to do something. But a new owner, there's a way to get around all the costs of cleaning up that disaster down there. If, say, let's just use the city as an example. If they wanted to buy it, they can get, and it doesn't cost anything, if I remember, yeah,
Correct.
an assessment and get everything listed that's wrong and hazardous over there. And then that exempts the city from any cost whatsoever of having to pay for any of that, because it was already a pre-existing condition there. So it is possible, if it ever came to be, that the city would take over that building, like condemning it and owning it. They wouldn't have any liability for any of that if they go through the proper channels first. Is that what you understood too, CJ?
Including the cleanup.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah, that was what I understood too.
So
That was all through the EPA.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you guys learned some things at Saving Places
Oh,
that could really help in trying to move this project forward somehow.
Yeah, and if it's yes, I can talk about it during my
Okay.
report, but as far as Saving Places goes, Steve and Linda provided me reports of their, so if it's okay with you guys, I can forward it to the whole team. Just, I think it's very great information. So,
I thought we had to provide those reports.
well, you do, you did, so I'm not having to bug you about it, but eventually, those will go to the state so we can get that scholarship money.
Yeah.
But, I can send it around to the rest of the HBC so they can read it. So, and I have to do one too, so I'll just copy and paste yours.
Yeah, that was a good template.
Okay, anything else on Voss or down to committee reports? Okay,
Oh, let me say this about Voss, I'm sorry.
yes.
I mentioned it to Lori, but the guy with Rocky, or no, what's it called? What's the library district here called?
Pikes Peak or
Rampart Library.
Rampart Library
Rampart,
District,
yeah.
Tim Miller.
Tim Miller. He is very interested in that building to start a market maker,
Market makers.
makers make,
Right.
Maker's Market.
which is, if anybody doesn't know, I didn't know, it's like a combination of shop class and home ec class. And he wants that building to be part of the library district's building. and start something like that in there. And he was asking me, we sat and talked for 15 minutes about it recently, and he wanted to know what kind of damage is going on over there that I knew of. And so I told him everything I knew, and I says, it's gonna cost a lot to get that cleaned up and restored. And he says, well, how much do you mean by a lot? And I says, well, north of 750,000, I would guess. And he says, well, we got $1 million we'd be willing to spend on it. He just said it so matter of factly.
If the library board would get.
Yeah, he would have to do that. So he's gonna bring it, he's gonna get it on the agenda. And I don't know about Tim. I've never met him before, so I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say.
The point is, we have some interest in the building, so I
Yes.
guess that's the message to convey, is that there would be some real interest in trying to keep that building viable and turn it into something usable and keep it recognizable for the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Those are good words.
Okay, so anything else on Voss? We good? All right, thank you. Larry, anything to share with us?
Well, I am with you. I reminder, mark your July calendar, 19th and 20th, Mary Green Pines Home Tour. I don't know how far Historical Society is with doing tickets, but mark your calendar if you haven't been. And some people like to go more than once. Check it out. So if you
It's
haven't,
every 3 years. and
every
this is-
3
this
years,
is
and
our
next
third.
is 2028. So but it's really a great experience. And if you haven't done it, and I do have a little summary for the committee person chair or my visit to the conference. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but what I thought was I did the Lincoln Hills thing, and heard the Lincoln Hills thing way back on another place that I had, whatever, and this one was more intense. But when I heard that this is Black History Month, we're adding history to you, and in this, remember that in the 20s and 30s in Woodland Park, there were owners of nice pieces of property with a place in the back corner for their servants. Black servants were part of the heritage of the 20s and 30s. This is via oral histories that I've taken. So I don't know how many properties had black servants, but you don't think of people in Woodland Park having servants, number one, particularly black servants, as our heritage. So I thought it tied it full circle, Black Heritage Month. And here is Black Heritage as resorts and what people were doing in the 20s and 30s. They were in this area from eastern Kansas, and they brought so some had a chauffeur, black. So you don't think of Woodland Park being in that category at all. You think of it more down home, earthy, but you don't think, in my mind, people coming in with cash flow beyond and summering up in the mountains. Here's my report. It's pretty short.
But if you look at all the censuses of Woodland Park, if you look at all the census reports from Woodland Park, they always have servants listed.
Servants.
And I've gone through our census, I don't know how many times, and I've never seen a servant listed.
Well, these are just summer people. They were not.
I know, and that's when they would do the census in June and July.
I don't know whether they owned the property or they were renters. If they were renters of property at that time, but it's just, it came via oral histories and what, so I don't know all the details.
Interesting.
And these people that I've interviewed are gone, so.
Sure. Well, black people were not a common sight up here.
See, I remember we had school district, we had a family that moved in the late 70s. They were with the Air Force, he was, and first grade or second grade, they had a daughter, and they moved out within 2 months.
They didn't last.
And school district called and said, why did you move out of the district? And they said, their daughter got tired of being touched. And this is 1970s.
In the 70s, that's right.
Okay,
And remember, I don't know if you guys, you might remember, Precious Kindness.
Patience.
Right.
Patient kindness.
Patience.
Kindness.
Patience.
Patience.
Patience,
Yeah, she lived on,
She built her own house out of 2x4s.
uh-huh,
and they tore it down.
yeah,
Oh,
we tried to keep it, but. Yeah, out there
Patient
on County
kindness.
Road, I think it was on County Road.
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, so, and she lived here for a long time and then worked with the railroad.
I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but something like that. Anyway, Eric, do you have anything to share with us?
I don't have any more to say.
Okay, two things. One thing is the tax credit portion of the sessions I took. State of Colorado is really pushing for residential properties to be included. Most of the commercial tax credits have already been taken, but there's a lot, up to $100,000 in tax credits offered to residential properties, historic, could be designated locally or more higher level designation. The difference now is it used to be a 50-year structure, now it can be 30-year.
Really?
So yes.
Wow.
So just keep that in mind for historic structures.
30.
Residential structures, up to $100,000 in tax credits are
Right.
available for those structures. And they do not have to be designated, they have to be designated by the completion of construction. So they do not have to be designated prior to these tax credit application being applied for. So it clearly has to be a historic structure and has to have value as a historic structure. But it's 30 years instead of 50, $100,000, just FYI. And then the other comment that I wanted to make was, I don't see this on the list, the discussion about the poster this year.
I skipped right over it.
So I just have a suggestion.
Yeah.
That maybe instead of creating a new poster this year, we use some of those funds to laminate previous posters and distribute them to local restaurants as placemats and just start sharing the history we've already created. That's what I would like to see done.
So there should be some stacks of those things.
And we just laminate them and we give Grandma's Kitchen and the smaller restaurants. And even if they just put it in the center of their table and like at Hungry Bear, they might have 5 different posters or however many posters, just one on each table. And we tell the owners, if anybody's interested in one of these posters, here's how they can get one for themselves or something along that line and start using the posters we've already created.
So does the city have a laminator?
David Heinley's office has a laminator.
Well, I'm just sure.
How much is lamination?
Well,
Yeah, we can take it over to FedEx too.
Minute.
Well, we got like $800, right? I thought these things are just kind of stacking up and creating dust and every person that I've shown those posters to, love them.
I'm actually going
They
to use
love
some of them at
looking at 'em.
Citizens Academy tomorrow evening.
Where, Jen?
The city does a Citizens Academy like once a year or so, where it's open for enrollment and it's a group of about 20 people. And we go through each of the different departments and provide background information, explanation about what that department does. And tomorrow night is planning night, and so I was actually going to use some of them as fabulous prizes.
oh, nice.
Okay,
cool.
For
so,
what it's worth, I love that idea and we can
So do I.
definitely figure out the lamination.
Get them at
I
restaurants.
love the idea for the 150th anniversary of the state next year, make that the project. And what are we doing for the 150th anniversary for the statehood? That would be a simple one to do. We are doing something to honor statehood. I don't know what the city's gonna do for the statehood. And then the planning or whatever, they're gonna have a big picnic on
What would that be, the Sasquatch?
Whatever.
Sasquatch, how do you say it?
the 150th, and the only state is in 76, you know. So, only
Good
state
idea.
celebrating.
Yeah.
So what are we doing I thought, what can we do? But this project, good idea, Linda.
But I like that, Larry. We should really start planning and, because that's not far away.
I know it, before you know it, it's here.
Eggs will be here. Anything else to share with us?
Yeah, I just, at the conference, as always, it was just so nice being with like-minded people. And then to listen to all the other towns, Montrose and Kremlin, all the other towns that went on about the buildings they restored and the millions of dollars they sunk into these buildings. And then they would go on and talk about the economic boom they had because of that, all the economic realities of historical preservation. All these cities, it was so nice to be around these commissioners that spoke and stuff that were friendly to preservation. It was really nice on that. And then I got a call yesterday. We got our last 5 or 6 headstones in for the city of Woodland Park Cemetery. And so now, as far as I know of, we have every plot has got a headstone now, be it an unknown or one that we had a name and knew, and it was all through donations. There's probably been 50 of them now that we've bought through donations, so we'll be able to get the last of those in. And then just FYI, I went to the opening of Black History Month celebration this last Saturday, and that's the first time I've ever been, and what an education and what a neat, cool experience that was. I really, really enjoyed myself down there.
Where
So
did they hold it?
It was at an LDS church down in between Lake and to the north, Cheyenne Boulevard.
Down Broadmoor area.
Yeah, down that area.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really nice.
So for these, are you gonna need, you said 8 more?
I think
They had
5 or
some-
6, I think that's what it is.
Do we have materials for?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're set from that perspective.
Mhm.
And that will take care of all the identified plots
Identified and unknowns.
and unknowns.
All the named and unknown plots.
And are we comfortable that we know where everything is in the cemetery now with ground
No,
penetrating radar?
No, there's some spots in there that, Nicole and I walked around and you can tell there's probably one there, but there's nothing on any of the maps
Do we,
and no other
do
indications.
we need to look at ground penetrating radar and the kids to do parts of to make sure over there? Or
It's
just throwing it out, okay,
It wouldn't hurt.
just saying if we're not sure, because I know.
I know the next one I got scheduled is for Park City though.
Okay.
So it won't be in Teller County, the next one I arranged for.
Hi. Anything to share with us? Dave?
No.
No?
Pretty well.
I want to remind everybody that Smitty had suggested that maybe we start trying to educate council and keep in front of them every once in a while. And Steve has a presentation ready to go.
Mhm.
And he was gonna just let us know which council meeting he might show up at in the very beginning when you can sign up for the 2 or 3 minutes that they give
3
you.
minutes they give
3
you,
minutes.
which isn't enough time to describe anything, but
Well, Kelly's not gonna cut you off too bad if you go over a little. But my point is that if any of us want to be there to support Steve right at the beginning, the meeting starts 6:30. But Steve has started, so he's got one ready to go, right?
I got one
What's the
ready to go,
topic?
yeah. It's all ready what I want to say to them is all ready. And there's nothing bad to say, it's just,
It's
it's
some
all
history,
good, positive 3 minutes
Right.
of words.
right? Kind of keep us front and center and present and type of thing. Okay, that's all I had, and Smitty's not here today, so let's go to skip Smitty's because he's not here. CJ, you're up.
I'll let Karen go first to see if she has anything, and then I have like a little long-winded.
I don't, I cede my time to CJ.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I just want to talk about saving places. So again, as you guys know, I'm kind of new to the historic preservation world, and I'm glad Karen voluntold me to go to this conference. So,
And to work with this committee, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So,
What was that word you used?
Yeah,
Well,
what
that
did
was
you
that
say?
was really good.
voluntold.
Voluntold. I gotta remember that one.
That's not what it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I appreciate it. So good on Karen for doing that. So, so I think we hit on a lot of good things that, like, as far as sessions goes. I think we hit on all the ones that actually like pertain to Woodland Park. I went to a couple that, there's some good bits here and there, but I'm like, doesn't really pertain exactly to Woodland Park, and that's what I try.
Nothing pertains to us.
Right,
Exactly.
right. So, on Saturday was the camp, which is Commission Assistance Mentoring Program, which I feel like throughout the days that I went, and then camp was definitely the most educational, and I got the most out of that. So I just want to hit on a couple things with you. So they went over legal stuff first, which honestly, we do a lot of things right. So I think that's like kudos to us. One thing that they said that stood out to me is each building that we look at, every time we preserve something, it has to have integrity and significance. So I think those are like two words we always have to keep in mind when we're looking at these buildings. So, and they really hit on the local level, I think through this, I'll say, political time we're in right now, no one really talks about the local level. And honestly, the local level is like the most important level of everyday life for not just you and me, but Joe Schmo down the street, right? So local level is the VIP of historic preservation, right? Local ordinances are the hammers that actually preserve something. No matter who's in the White House, they're not coming to Woodland Park and preserving anything. That's you guys sitting here now. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And, you guys are important and doing great work. So. Let's see here. I did not know this. The National Park Service on their website has a huge library of historic preservation briefs, they call them. So have you guys ever heard about that, Steve? So I never knew that. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. And a lot of it's like on facades and different styles and like awnings and doors and windows and that type of thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. They hit on this a lot. As a board member, whether you're at City Market or Safeway or Joni's or whatever, you're representing the city of Woodland Park, and you're in the public eye, right? So I think that's just something kind of nice to think about while you're out in the city. So the biggest thing I think during camp was preservation planning. As a planner, I took a lot from this. And what we could potentially be doing different or better, or, more things we could be doing. The senior planner with the city of Pueblo, I think Kevin was his name, and he is like part-time preservation planner, part-time senior planner doing site plans and subdivisions and all that good stuff. So he said they've had a lot of success with like small town surveys regarding historic preservation. You know what I mean? So it's not like he was surveying the whole city of Pueblo, but it's like, hey, let's just take these, 5 square miles or like these blocks and send out a survey just to see what we get, and make it very specific about, the Voss building or about the Roberts house, and just to see how many replies we get back and see like what the public is actually interested in. And it also could be used for education purposes, like the city of Woodland Park has a historic preservation committee. This is what we do, and this is what we're asking from you. So I think that's something to keep in mind too.
Some of the preachers wrote, let them know that there's money available for them to fix up those cabins instead of tearing them down.
So I think, good information there. So start with like small sample groups, and then, if that's successful, then we can potentially like grow from there and get more and more information from the citizens of Woodland Park, which like that's why we're here, we're serving them, right? So.
And real briefly, almost every class I go to every year, community involvement is one of the things they press.
100%, yeah. So, which gets me to my next thing. We talked about city council. They really hit on this hard. It is very important to include your city council in these things. You guys do such great work, especially with the cemetery and what you guys did for the Roberts House. And, you know, if you ask any commissioner or whoever, you know, hey, what is the Historic Preservation Committee doing? I hope they would have points like, hey, look, they just did this. They're getting ground penetrating radar for that cemetery. And, you know, they're doing all these things. I think it is very important for us to go in front of council as the HPC, not as just a citizen, and just educate them. Hey, this is what we're doing. Look at all the great things we're working on, right? Just so they're in the know, it's on the record.
So there you go, Lori. There's a project for you.
So I think
Yeah, but that's
it's,
also why we have a council liaison person.
and I agree with that, for sure. He should be communicating these to the city council. You know, even if it's once a year or twice a year, I don't see an issue personally as like myself as a staff person going, introducing yourself as the chair, or, you know, the vice chair, whoever wants to come and just give a brief 5 minutes on. I haven't talked to Karen or the city manager or the mayor about this. I'm just saying, you know, I think they would be interested. You know, it wouldn't be every meeting, obviously,
Yeah.
but
I think
taking
this
5
group should
minutes.
send a representative periodically to do something like that instead of, what do you call it? I can't remember his name. The liaison. Yeah.
So I think that'd be very beneficial. I really feel like the council would get things out of that. You know, I could help get a PowerPoint presentation put together and take some pictures at Templeton and things like that. So just an idea, not telling you guys what to do, but just a good idea. And the last thing, public outreach, I think is a big thing. So, you know, more youth programming to get the kids involved. We've talked about local tours before, but that's the
Youth Pass
Youth
Historical.
Pass Historical Society.
UPHS.
Okay, kind of does that stuff. You know, education events, and then again, city council outreach, so.
Well, this group has participated in leading in the summertime some of their little history walks.
When was the last time one of us actually did that?
It's been quite a while.
I just know it's
COVID really messed up that stuff, but,
Well, that was 2020, so at this point, it's
I
been
think
almost 5 years.
well, probably 21 then. It's not been,
Well, it
things
was
did not,
2020
but
when,
it didn't come back.
yeah, 2020 was when COVID ripped across the country. So that would have been the summer that all that would have gotten shut down.
And then 21 was still a lot of cautiousness that was going on as well. It did not.
Yeah, because I think 21 was that it threw off the Mary Green Pines tour a year.
Right, and so.
Go off a year.
When it went out to 22.
And I just asked that question because I know every year you guys have had me, it shows up in the work plan, that we've not talked about, hey, Larry, especially Larry, you're quite involved with Youth Pass Historical Society, that if anybody was gonna tell me, oh, I led a tour last month, I would have heard it from you. But nobody's ever said that in any of our meetings. So we
The
drag that
tour-
around.
The tours are all available, you know, almost like the bill. You can do a tour, you know, you don't have to, you can come in and if he's free, he will give a tour.
Right.
The tours are really happening weekly sometimes, you know.
Mhm.
So I know Bill gives tours, but, you know, for sure. I don't know how many, but sometimes, you know, you go to visit like on a Saturday, Bill's not there, it says on the door, on tour. I don't know how many people, I don't know whether you keep an inventory of how many are on a
I
tour.
think they do keep track.
You know, like,
And it's
I-
scheduled at a certain time.
It is, you know, documented.
I think so. I think
But
so.
actually the history tour has not happened since COVID. You know, where somebody, but they found those who had volunteered, they were, let's say there Saturday from 10 to whatever, and nobody was there, even though they were available to tour the city, whatever, which would take an hour and a half.
But it all boils back down to volunteers and finding people to do those things too. And there's been a lot of changes in the past historical society over the last.
And then they were wanting to do a new brochure on the historic properties of the city and what to look for. I don't know how far that got.
I don't either. And Main Street did something that was a companion brochure that went with the historical society walking tour too. There was flora and fauna that got added to that, but I don't know I think it's all hit the back burner at this point. But I would ask, in light of some of the things that you brought up, CJ, I'm just curious, did the planning office have input into all the new pictures that we have in city council?
We didn't know about it until then.
You know, and I just to express, groups like ours that have an intense history, interest in history and what we do. I mean, I kind of expect the planning department to be our committee's advocate amongst the other city groups and projects that are going on too, because we're not in you guys' staff meetings and everything else. And it just makes, it's a quandary. If you're going to encourage your volunteers to be volunteers and to participate, that there's certain areas of their expertise that they could lend a hand of deciding maybe what a good thing would be if there was an effort to change some things about city council chambers and putting up pictures. So I think I've had several comments back to me from different people that I know asking if we were involved with anything that went on down there. But no, didn't know anything about it. I just wanted to ask you guys, am I wrong? You guys got bushwhacked with it, or it was a surprise to you guys in terms of that it was happening, or these pictures were chosen.
Yeah, there was no inclusive process around any of those.
Okay. Just
Not that I'm aware of.
I just wanted to express that, you know, it doesn't help volunteer groups to be volunteers or want to be volunteers if they're not consulted. I guess I'll just leave it at that, just in case anyone. Anything else that I forgot?
I had to say one thing.
Something else.
Go ahead, Steve.
I really had a nice talk with CJ down there, and I didn't recognize him out of his element at first.
Yeah,
It's such a
I
nice
Steve on the
talk.
shoulder, and he almost gave me the sun.
But you know, CJ is a fifth generation Coloradoan. And he told me his grandfather's name, and it rang a bell. He said it was out in Park County, and I happen to have stuff because I've researched almost every pioneer in Park County there is. Park County is the size of Delaware, so there's a lot of pioneers. But CJ's great-great-great-grandfather, Mr. Edmondson, was a premier stock raiser and horse raiser in Park County. He was very well respected in Park County. And I can't remember, I think he was a commissioner or a treasurer at one point too. And, but CJ's really got a fascinating history here in this Pikes Peak region.
Cool.
Yeah,
It is cool.
yeah.
Are
it
you
was
over
the-
30 years old?
Yes. Yeah, it was the Platte Ranch on Highway 9 out there.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
pretty
It's
cool.
still there.
Yeah, Steve sent me a bunch of articles this morning about like the whole Edmondson family and like stuff that I knew before and then stuff that I had no idea of, so I really appreciate it, Steve. That
So
was
you
awesome.
learned some more.
Yeah, I was sending pictures of my mom this morning.
Did you send her marriage certificate?
Yeah, she's like, where did you get that? She's like, I have a copy in the safe, but.
Turns out mom's older than you thought.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, my brother was born? No, I'm just kidding. I know it's 5:05, I know we gotta get out of here. The last thing I'll say is, I forgot to mention, during camp, they talked a lot about who your customers are, and I just looked at it through the eyes of the planner. My customers are usually the citizens of Woodland Park. My customers are also the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment and the Historic Preservation Committee. So to better serve you, I want to, after every meeting, I want to go over my homework, because I realize that I have missed a lot of my homework, and then I get here and I'm like, holy crap.
And I've given them lots of free reign to figure this
Yeah, so
out,
it's
because if
like-
I nag them, it never happens,
I don't
so.
want to be, I don't want to be caught not
Sure.
doing my homework. So
I appreciate it.
today, I have stars by all my homework. I'm going to submit a work order for the roof panel and for the barn at the Roberts House. Double check on the planning grant, so 15 versus 25K. We're going to contact Chuck, so we'll see on that. Rob Feltz, who's the guy overseeing all the facilities and seeing how we can get into Roberts House. email Silas with the golf course to get written permission, send the midterm preservation plan to you all, and then I just wrote down the posters thing, so that was great. So, all right,
Cool.
we good?
Thank you, CJ.
Yeah,
Thank you for all your work.
I'm glad you went.
yeah, appreciate
I'm
it.
glad you went.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, anything else? We're good. We're out of here.
All right.
Okay,